Hello and welcome to another edition of Another Book Review. This week I'll be reviewing Fatherland by Robert Harris. I'll talk very briefly about the author, go into a spoiler-free overview of the book, talk about what I liked about it, what I didn't like about it, who I'd recommend the book to, and finish off with what I will be reading for next time. I did read this on audiobook, so unfortunately I don't have a cover to share with you. Robert Harris is a former journalist who wrote quite a bit before he became an author. And he started writing relatively young because this came out when he was in his 30s. Fatherland was his first novel, became a relatively big book, sold I think 3 million copies and was made into a TV movie. He's written several books since then. Most of his stuff falls into the historical fiction category of novels, and he's had a couple of screenplays that he's had adapted into movies. I know specifically for Netflix over the last couple of years. This book, Fatherland, is not a historical fiction. It is typically known as a alternative history. And so it's taking a moment in the past, saying what would have been different if we had changed this moment, and then going forward with this new alternative history or timeline. And this book is about a detective in a world where Nazi Germany has won the Second World War, and they alone are the sole superpowers in the world, along with the United States, are the only two superpowers, the U.S. and Nazi Germany. The rest of Europe has become vassal states of Nazi Germany, and Europe, there's still some fighting that the United States is supporting, essentially guerrillas in what we now would call Russia, but the former Soviet Union. So on the Eastern Front, the war is still going on, but for the most part, this book takes place in Berlin and is concerned with a detective known as March, who has been assigned to a case where there's been a dead body that's been found in a lake, and he has to, the deeper and deeper he gets in this case, he begins to uncover this vast conspiracy. And this is all taking place in the 60s of this timeline, and it's a few days before Adolf Hitler's birthday. It's his 75th birthday party, his 75th birthday, and so there's this huge celebration that's being planned in Berlin, which is kind of, all this is kind of surrounding that. And so it moves. I will say for the prose, this thing moves very quickly. It's really a thriller is ultimately what the book is. And Robert Harris doesn't have any fat on this thing and just moves scene to scene to scene and just glides. And I think that's one of the strongest things about it. I think he does a very good job of giving you the history in drips and drabs, and doesn't, throw all this information once you're kind of able to, over the course of the book, take it in. And I thought that was really well done. I think the character of March is a very interesting character. Essentially, is a character who is apart from society, like a lot of detective characters. He is disgusted by society and has to kind of live by his own set of values, and has to make peace with this world that he finds himself in. And I think one of the other things that Robert Harris does, and he does it, I think, pretty subtly, is really the ossification of culture within a fascist or authoritarian state. It's the sense that everything is always looking backwards, and there's never any kind of forward momentum in culture. There are some comments on, a couple comments in the book. There are kind of these references to the Beatles, who are alive in this world. There's a couple references to them a couple times I thought was pretty funny. There are some laugh out loud funny moments. I think the side characters are done to the level where you know who these characters are, but they don't take away from the main character, March, and really what is the main thrust of the book, which is kind of his pursuit of justice for this crime. And so I thought all that was done really well. The points that I didn't like as much, and they're relatively minor, there's a couple moments in the book where, from a craft standpoint, I think this book is really well put together. There are no extra scenes. He just kind of has everything he needs and nothing he doesn't need. There's a couple points in the book where he has kind of his one gear, his race car is going drive. And I think there are a couple moments where he could have pulled the brakes back a little bit and let the emotional resonance of the scene come out a little bit. So that happened a couple times, where it wasn't too often, but there are a couple times where he could have done that. I think it would have been heftier. It would have been more effective if he had done it that way. The book is very tropey. If you're someone who's read any detective fiction before, you'll see that there are a lot of tropes in the book. There's the kind of lonely but dogged investigator who just cares about justice and is married to his job at the expense of all of his other relationships. You have kind of a manic pixie dream girl who kind of comes into his life. There's a romance involved. And so you do have some of the things that are, I think, looking at it, there are definitely some tropes in the book, and you're either can overcome that or bothered by it, or you're not. The other thing I would mention, the book is dealing with World War II and dealing with Germany in World War II, so there are a lot of mentions of the Holocaust. If that's just something you don't want in your fiction, I totally understand that. But just know that that is a heavy element in this book, and do with that what you will. And then as far as who I would recommend the book to, there wasn't really a ton of graphic violence. There wasn't a ton of graphic sex. I think this book, if you're a fan of the Yiddish Policemen's Union, I think you'll really enjoy this book. The other book it reminded me of, obviously, of Man in the High Castle, is also kind of a similar book to that. There's a third book that I now cannot remember that I would also compare to this book, but those two especially. I would be surprised if Michael Chabon had not read this book before writing Yiddish Policemen's Union, because they're kind of talking to each other in some ways. But that was Fatherland by Robert Harris, and next time I will be reading Guilty Admissions by Nicole Laporte, which is about the college admissions scandal, Varsity Blues. So until next time, if you have read this book and had feelings about it one way or the other, please let me know below in the comments, and I'll leave my Twitter link below if you want to, my Twitter handle below if you want to follow me there. Please like or subscribe. Till next time, bye.